Hello, today we are looking at structure and how to answer a structure question. More importantly, how to get higher than a 5 out of 8. So we're looking at the higher marks and how to attain and get the higher marks. Please like and subscribe. Also, if you are interested, I offer online tutoring. So if you're interested in having an English tutor, send me a message and we will see if we can arrange that. So firstly, structure. The example of the question. Now this is focused on the AQA English. However, structure is a part of all the exam boards, whether it's Welsh Board, Edexcel, AQA, whatever board you're doing, international, GCSEs. Writers use two types of elements to tell a story. They use language and they use structure. However, this is an AQA question. It can be used across all boards. So, question 3, English Language Paper 1. You now need to look at the whole of the source. This text is taken from the beginning of a story. How is the text structured to interest you as a reader? You could write about what the writer focuses our attention on at the beginning, how and why the writer changes the focus as the source develops, any other structural features that interest you. Now, I've highlighted could in yellow. Could, must, should, really. The exam board are pretty good in giving help in the questions. So if you're in the exam and you get a complete brain freeze, you can look at the coulds, what you could write about, and what the focus of attention is. Now the reason it's highlighted and coloured in red, certain words and phrases, is because when we come to the end of the PowerPoint and we have the sample answers, you will be able to see how I've used the question and pulled out the specific important parts, the red parts, and embedded them in the answers. So that is one of the questions, but we need to know what is structure. Structure is what happens where and why. How is the story built? Structure is the building blocks, the materials used to create a story. It's different than language. Language is the words and the phrases and the techniques used. Structure is what happens where and why. So, for example, some structural features, we're looking for setting. Where is the story set? Is the writer talking about a character? Now in the AQA exam papers, the last few years, there has been very short paragraphs to open with, and a lot of the short paragraphs introduce a character. Time frames. Is the flashbacks? Is the cross-cutting, cutting from one time, one scene to another scene. A flashback where all of a sudden they think back, they remember the day when somebody came into the hat shop, for example. We talk about the weather. The weather can predict the mood. In English language we might say pathetic fallacy, but this is structure. Writers use description. Descriptions create images. Dialogue. Dialogue shows how characters interact. And action can show physicalities. So an example. It was on a dreary night of November that I beheld. Famous line from a famous story. If we were looking at language, how does the writer use language? We might talk about the adjective dreary. We might talk about how the writer uses pathetic fallacy. But structure. So the writer's talking about the weather. Is it going to be a happy, feel-good story? Or is it looking like a horror? It was on a dreary night of November. So the writer uses the weather to create a mood and atmosphere. He's using the weather to create a sense of danger. Another example. At the corner of Oxford Circus, Rosabelle bought a bunch of violets. The writer's talking about setting and character. Who is the character Rosabelle? Where is she at? She's at Oxford Circus. So that is the what. Now, if we're answering a question, what we are trying to include is, and we can follow these bullet point steps and use these bullet point steps. You will see in a second how I've used these in my sample answer. In the beginning, the writer focuses our attention on. What does he focus our attention on? Character, setting, weather, location, time. We learn that, include a quote. This immediately establishes, explain what the quote established, what does it tell us? And finally, this makes the reader think and feel. Remember the question is, the reader, what does it make you think and feel? And then finally, the writer then shifts focus. So again, if we look at the bullet points and then look, interest you as a reader, focus our attention, beginning, changes the focus, and any other structural features. So the example is, the red again is taken from the question, the yellow is quotes that I've placed inside the answer. In the beginning, the writer focuses our attention on the main character. There's a structural feature, Rosabella and her journey home. We learn that she has had a hard day at work and she would have sacrificed her soul for a good dinner. This immediately establishes she is tired, hungry, and of a lower class. This makes the reader feel sympathy for Rosabella and question why she hasn't had much to eat and why she has had a hard day at work. The writer then shifts focus and the setting changes to the inside of the bus. That answer there would gain you a minimum of a 5 out of 8, if not higher. We are looking at the higher marks. It covers everything the exam question is asking for. It shows understanding of structure. It includes and embeds quote into the answer. Let's try it. So, Holes by Louis Sachar. Absolutely love that book. Brilliant Disney film as well. Usually you may have studied Holes in Key Stage 3. It's a good text for year 7s and year 8s, so a lot of people listening will know Holes, will have read it in school. If you go to chapter 14, the introduction of the warden, it's a perfect example of structural features. How Sachar introduces the warden. The structure is very clear in the paragraphs. So if we look at my formula, my system of how to answer a question, in the beginning the writer focuses our attention on, we learn that this immediately establishes, this makes the reader think, feel. The writer then shifts focus. If we use that system on chapter 14, the writer starts by a description of the warden. She gets out the car and we have that lovely description of her. He then adds dialogue. He then adds action. So the description, we create an image in our minds of what this warden looks like. The dialogue shows us how she interacts with other characters, and then the action shows us the physicalities, what she does to characters. So look at Louis Sachar chapter 14, the introduction of the warden, and have a go at your structural response.